Our body and our feelings are at the core of our identity. Our identity is what defines who we really are. It simply answers the question, who am I? When we talk about identity from the sexuality perspective, we talk about our sexual identity, and it is based on two important aspects: our gender and our sexual orientation, which affect our identity to a very large extent. So what is gender? Well, it is if someone is a woman, a man, intersexual, or non-binary, meaning neither a man nor a woman. Our gender is defined by three different aspects. First, our biological gender. Our biological gender is defined by our sex chromosomes, our inner and outer genitals, and sex hormone levels. Our sex chromosomes control sex differentiation from the fetal stage in the very early stages of pregnancy and determine how the body should function, develop, and look. It determines which inner and outer sex organs and which sex hormone levels we get. External genitalia is what is visible. So for example, the labia, the inner and outer lips of the vulva, the vaginal opening, the penis shaft, and glands. Whereas examples of internal genitalia are the vagina, the ovaries, uterus, or testicles. Secondly, by our legal sex. Our legal sex is the gender we are registered with on public records, that is, the gender on our passport or ID. We are assigned our legal sex when we are born and registered in public records. This means that doctors examine the child when it is born and see if it is a girl or a boy based on the three factors that are part of the biological sex, that is, sex chromosomes, inner and outer genitals, and sex hormones. However, some people's biological gender does not fit the typical definitions for male or female bodies. These people are thus neither girl nor boy. They are intersexual. So intersexuals or intersex persons are thus people born with certain biological sex markers, so sex chromosomes, genitals, and sex hormones, who are considered female and others who are considered male. Being intersexual is a naturally occurring variation in humans. In 2000, researchers estimated that 1.7% of human births, so that would be 1 in 60, might be intersex, including variations that may not become apparent until, for example, puberty or until attempting to conceive. And some can live with some intersex variation their whole life without knowing it. Globally, some intersex infants and children, such as those with ambiguous outer genitalia, are surgically or hormonally altered to create more socially acceptable sex characteristics, however, with no firm evidence of favorable outcomes. More and more, these interventions are considered human rights abuses. Some intersex persons may be assigned and raised as a girl or a boy, but then identify with an other gender later in life, while most continue to identify with their assigned sex. So biologically, there are more than two sexes. There are women, men, and intersexuals, while there are only two legal sexes, woman and man. Nevertheless, all children are assigned a legal sex upon birth. Around the world, there are many groups, not least many intersex people themselves, who think that one should wait to treat intersex children until they are old enough to tell themselves if they feel like boy, girl, or something in between or neither, and what they want to happen to their body. But very few countries in the world, in 2020, only Colombia, Malta, and Chile have explicitly banned operations on children with intersex variations if they are not medically motivated. In Germany, it is permitted to postpone the decision on gender assignment, which means that you can wait until the child can make a mature decision themselves. In some countries, there is now also a third legal gender, for example in Germany and India. And then we have our gender identity. Our gender identity is the gender we experience ourselves as, the gender we feel we are and what we identify with. Our understanding of gender has changed a lot over time, all over the world. In many parts of the world, we have long said that gender is binary. That is to say that there are only two sexes, male and female. So here we have men, and they are all about the same as each other. Their bodies look in a certain way, their brains work in a certain way, they behave in a certain way, like special things, can do certain things, should do certain things, and should not do other things, and so on. And then we have women here, and they are also all about the same as each other in every way. Their bodies look in a certain way, their brains work in a certain way, they behave in a certain way, they like special things, can do certain things, should do certain things, and should not do other things, and so on. And our perception has historically been that they are completely different, in fact even the opposite to what all men are. But today we know that if we were to take all the men around the world and collect them in a group here, and then if we were to take all the women around the world and gather them in a group here, then the man here and the man here is considerably more different from each other than the man here and the woman here. Similarly, the woman here would be very different from the woman here, while that woman and this man would be more similar. In other words, it is not true that gender is binary, and we therefore need to see gender as a scale. So most people are here somewhere between man and woman on the scale. And thanks to the research that exists today, we know that there are greater differences within the group of women and within the group of men than there are differences between them. There are also people who define themselves as non-binary. Non-binary is a word that describes people who neither identify as man or woman, or sometimes both, or none at all. The word can mean different things for different people, but is often a standpoint against the idea that there are only two sexes, that they are each other's opposites, and that our gender says everything about who we are. Since we are assigned a legal sex very early, before we can recognize and tell others which sex we identify with, and the decision on which legal gender we are is based on our biological gender, it may happen that our legal and biological gender and our gender identity does not always match. So, a child born with male sex chromosomes, genitals, and sex hormones may be assigned to the legal sex man, but grow up and feel deep inside as a woman and not as a man. Likewise, a child born with female sex chromosomes, genitals, and sex hormones may be assigned to the legal sex woman, but grow up and feel deep inside that they are a man and not a woman. If our biological gender, our legal sex, and our gender identity all correspond with each other, meaning that someone has, for example, female sex chromosomes, female genitals, and female sex hormones, and has been assigned the legal sex female, and also identifies as a woman, this person is called a cis person. The word cis means on the same page, and so it is for many people, that they feel the same sex as their biological and legal sex. However, this is not the case for everyone. Some people do not feel like the sex of their biological gender or the gender that stands in their passport. This person is called transgender. So a trans person is, for example, a person who was born with what we call a boy's body, that is, with a penis and testicles, and was registered as a boy, but strongly feels like a girl or a woman. A trans person who feels like a girl is thus both a trans person and a girl, that is, a trans girl or trans woman. Many transgender people describe this as, if you watching this is a woman, feeling exactly how you are feeling right now. But then when looking down, you find a penis instead of a vagina. Or if you watching this is a man, feeling exactly how you are feeling right now. So you are everything that you are and that you feel deep inside. But when you look down, instead of a penis, you find a vagina. So just as much as you, as a cis person, experience yourself as, for example, being a woman, a trans woman feels she is a woman just as strongly. Transgender children and adults often feel that something is wrong with them, even without knowing that they are transgender, especially if they are not even aware of the possibility that you could be transgender. When children feel that something is wrong, they often try to hide this from others. And when the thing that they are hiding is their own identity, this can really limit them, negatively affect their self-esteem and their well-being. But even if they have the knowledge, the social context, and self-esteem to be able to openly live as transgender, they will probably suffer a lot more discrimination than cis people. On average, transgender people have lower self-esteem and suffer from mental illness and anxiety to a greater extent than cis people. As a leader, it is therefore very important to confirm all children's identity as they express it, so that you strengthen their self-esteem and show that you accept the child's gender identity. The most important thing for you as a leader and fellow human being is to always meet people based on their gender identity. It is discriminatory to refuse to call someone by their name or refuse to use their pronouns. If you are uncertain, it is better to ask, how do you define yourself? What is your pronoun? Make sure to always use inclusive language. For example, if you don't know how everyone in your team identifies themselves, instead of saying, "Come on, girls," you can say, "Come on, team." So if you do know that everyone defines themselves as girls, though, then you should of course call them girls. That's the whole point. Respecting and accepting everyone's gender identity and communicating with them accordingly. Remember that gender is a big part of your and your player's identity. It's about your identity and who you are. It is a human right to be respected and have access to the same rights regardless of who you are. And by creating a safe space where all individuals are strengthened and allowed to be themselves, we can also prevent mental illness and anxiety that is so common for children who for various reasons do not fit the norm. As a coach, you can discuss gender norms and talk about what it is like to be a girl, boy, a cis person, a trans person, non-binary, and simply open up for more perspectives, and through your approach and language, create a culture of acceptance and respect that can support your players outside the field as well. The other aspect of our identity linked to sexuality is sexual orientation. Our sexual orientation simply means who you are attracted to or fall in love with. There are several different sexual orientations, with the most common ones being heterosexual, meaning that you are attracted to or fall in love with someone with the opposite sex. Homosexual, meaning that you are attracted to or fall in love with someone with the same sex. Or bisexual, meaning that you are attracted to or fall in love with someone irrespective of their sex. So it is important to remember that, just like our gender identity, we are born with our sexual orientation. Unfortunately, there are still people who say that you choose your sexual orientation, but this is not true. We cannot control who we are attracted to or fall in love with. We can absolutely choose our sexual partners or who we are in a relationship with, but we do not choose whom we fall in love with or who we are attracted to. Our sexual orientation, however, has really nothing to do with our gender. So trans people can, just like cis persons, fall in love with people with the same sex or a different gender than they have. As a leader, you will probably have players with different sexual orientations. And once again, here you can make a big difference through what culture you create, how you treat the players, and what kind of language you use. Do you say girlfriends and boyfriends or partners? Do you assume that all the girls in your team have boyfriends? Or do you not assume anything? So by affirming different sexual orientations and normalizing them through your language and behavior, you can create an inclusive culture on your team where everyone feels that they can be themselves, and thereby gain better self-esteem by feeling valuable and respected just as they are.